Live.
We're
Hi.
live.
Our topic today. Progress, not perfection.
Oh, we're
Oh
diving
my
right into
goodness.
it. No, we're not even gonna warm things up.
No,
All right.
because there are so many examples of it. It's ridiculous. I'm getting such it's in every aspect of my existence. So I thought I'd start with the one that is a bit of a follow-on from previous chats we've had, which is this scheduling on my calendar. And I'm still in progress of that. It is not at a level of perfection.
Are we ever?
Well, this is the point, right? The other area it's really showing up in, and I've mentioned this previously, but we're doing some renos, and it was painting weekend last weekend, and there was hope for completion of one room, but of course, like that was going to happen. But there was progress. And it's this real battle between what it is that I wanted.
So your vision for
it. And what actually occurred. And I then started looking at that across many areas of even conversations with clients around, oh, I just want my life to be easy, or I just want this to happen in my life. And I'm like, when they're requesting that, I'm really good at going, well, let's have a look at what has shifted rather than the ultimate. But when it turned around on me, not
now,
so
now,
good.
now you're putting your ass in their seat, right? I just want it to happen.
I wanted it to happen. It wasn't that hard. Surely we could put paint on the wall. So I thought, well, progress, not perfection, is a really good reminder for every aspect. So that's the top level issues that is really highlighted for me. And I thought I'd share a little bit of which areas I was progressing in, even though I haven't reached perfection.
But I don't know if we're ever there. Are we really? And what definition? By whose definition?
Yeah.
The little minion in your head? Like what?
Well, I'll start with the calendar. Let's call it overscheduling. Again, whose definition is it of an overschedule or an underschedule? I mean, really. So how do I gauge that? So I would get to the end of a day and go, wow, there was a lot on that day. Did I squish too many things in? And then I was like, well, I couldn't have squished too many things in because I did them all and I feel okay. So then I was going, well, okay, so I've made progress on not overscheduling because I feel okay in it. But if somebody else looked at it, maybe they thought that was an overschedule, or it's different to what I said, I'll stick to this number. And it had gone over the magic number. But who created that number? It did.
So we can eliminate if somebody else looked at my schedule, what would they think? Because that's irrelevant, really, right? Unless you're showing it to your coach and you're working on a schedule thing and you're trusting their opinion. Other than that,
it's all made up in my own head and what I expected to do, and it leaves no room for expansion or a variable that would allow for a greater number of. And so the specific example was that my calendar had bookings in it, but then somebody from overseas had got onto Zoom a week ahead of what their appointment actually was. And so when I finished with the current client that I was talking to, literally at the same time, I went, oh, I noticed you tried to get on. We don't actually have a meeting until next week, but sure, look, I'm here. Let's have a conversation. And it was just perfectly timed, probably for them. It didn't really impact me too much in that I just stayed working an extra half an hour and really whatever. Didn't impact family life, didn't impact really anything at all other than I just stayed in this room for an extra half an hour. But when I looked at my calendar, I was like, oh, I didn't just do 8 things that day. I actually did 9. And it was like, if I had if I allowed myself to be beaten up by that, oh no, I failed that day, I went over, I wouldn't have felt good about having that conversation, when in actual fact, I felt really good about having that conversation because it felt like it was really nicely timed. And it did keep me in here a little longer, and I did have to get up early the following morning to do a call 5:30 my time. So I was like pushing the boundary a little bit into the evening to then get up super early the following day. But I was actually okay. And so I set these limitations based on my perception of how I would feel. And then when I let it expand and just go with the moment of, yes, I could do that now, I managed it.
Something that's coming to mind is wondering if we redefined what perfection meant. And what if perfection was being a little bit more nimble with the calendar, trusting that if you do go over one day, you're going to make up for it the next day. Like just finding that balance and that rhythm between the two, as opposed to it being a rigid straight line that if you don't stick to, then everything is messed up. Like if you're trying to stick to a certain regime and of dieting or whatever it is, and you decide to have ice cream one night, the whole diet that you're doing isn't all bad and all out the window. You don't just quit and go eat French fries for the next 6 weeks. It doesn't all have to go away. It's just finding that rhythm and balance that is going to keep you motivated and keep you in it, right? What if that's the new definition?
What if perfection was actually flexibility or adaptability, like that kind of idea? Yeah. And I mean, it happened in the painting because the wall paint got a little bit up on the ceiling paint.
I got those spots. They exist. It's always the last roll. Oh, I'm doing great. I haven't hit the ceiling all day. Oh my God. Bang.
That. Yes, that. And but like there's this weekend, we still have ceiling paint. We can put on some ceiling paint. It's pretty heavy duty. It'll go over that color. So really, it's not, we can adapt by this weekend doing a little bit more on the ceiling, even though we didn't think we would have to, but now we do, because there's a bit of imperfection of the ceiling paint. But yeah, if we, this idea of perfection does seem to be an absolute feel. And I recently did some, might sound a bit silly, but I do paint. My daughter bought me a paint by numbers. So I did up this, it was a couple of birds.
Not silly at all. You're talking to someone who does stuff too.
So I was doing just it didn't matter to anybody else. I was just doing it for pure enjoyment, just coloring painting in the numbers. Then you go over the lines. It's no longer perfect. So we sort of have this perfection idea of it's within a certain boundary. It's within a certain line. And when I look at what that painting ultimately was, it didn't matter that I went over the lines or the correct color was, they never provide enough of paint in the right colors, and the color that doesn't need to go on the canvas as much, there's heaps of it left over.
It's the same quantity as the thing that needs everything. Yeah, it's like the whole sky. Yeah, exactly.
So it's like, oh well, I'll just have to improvise. What shall I do for that little section? And the painting still looks great, still looks fine. There's no problem at all. We get caught up in the restriction of these, the definition of what is perfection, which seems to be very boundary orientated and very ultimate.
Mm-hmm.
We bypass the progress.
Yeah, I had my own experience with this week as well. I'm going to come at it from a little different angle though. So I'm going to start with the story, and then I'll tell you where I think I'm progressing and where I am definitely not perfect. So I'm definitely not the perfect parent. I might play one on Instagram, but I'm not in real life. There's no way, right? But I was at my daughter's recital. She was doing her end of year little performance with the rest of her school for all of the parents. And there's like 30 people on the list, and every kid goes up once or twice for like 30 seconds to a minute to do their little ditty. And I'm sitting next to my daughter and my wife, and I'm completely on my daughter saying, "Shh, listen, like pay attention, like these are your friends, these are your colleagues, your peers, whatever, like we need to show them some respect and pay attention, like they worked hard." Anyways, so listening to all these kids, and then my daughter goes up and she does her group one, and I took a little video, and then like a couple kids later, one of the kids starts playing one of my favorite songs, and I'm like, "Oh, this is really cool." So I got super into it, and then the teacher says, "I've got to tell a little story. This was actually when this kid came and told me he wanted to do this song, it blew my mind, and I got so excited because it was the first album I've ever bought." And so then I got like all in my head. I'm like, "How old are you? Like, my God, that's like my favorite song. And that came out when you were in grade 6? That doesn't make any sense." So then I started Googling on my phone, okay, what time, like what year did that come out? And how old is he? And then I look up and Julie's like, "Who are you texting?" And I'm like, "Nobody. I was just checking something on my phone." I missed my daughter's performance.
Oh no.
So like she had already sat back down. She was sitting there, and I'm like, "Oh my God." So I felt really bad for the next half hour or so while the rest of the kids are playing, and parents are coming up to me and saying, "Oh, your daughter was so good, blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, "Yeah, of course, she's great. She's practices all the time, blah, blah, blah." But I'm totally in my head, and I'm upset, and I feel like I've let her down, and I'm trying to show a good example by watching all the other kids, but I miss my own daughter because I got distracted and got in my own head. So I figured I could play this one of a few different ways. By the time I got home, I could pretend like nothing ever happened. I saw it.
Yep.
I could whatever. I could ignore it, or I could let it eat me up inside, or I could say something right away. So almost as soon as we walked in the door, I'm like, "Mia, I have to tell you something. I screwed up. I got distracted by what the music teacher said. I started looking at my phone. I missed your performance. I feel horrible. I know I can't give that back to you, but I'm really sorry. And I at least I know that this is a teachable moment that I'm going to learn from, and hopefully you can too." But I'm like, "I feel so bad." And she's like, "I have an idea." And she takes me downstairs to her piano, and she gave me a little solo. So I'm like sitting there getting all like teary and stuff. And it was really sweet of her to do that. But in reflecting on this, I was thinking about the progress that I've made as a parent. Like, yes, I screwed this up, and I can't make that up to her. But if I think back, how would I have handled that a few years ago? I probably would have ignored it, pretended it didn't happen, not owned up to my mistake at not being perfect. And it probably would have eaten at me for a few days. So I see this as progress for me as a parent, as an adult, And although I'm not perfect, it's not the worst thing that's ever going to happen, and it's not a huge thing. But for me, it's important, and it's important to share my imperfection for me and for others.
Yeah, because otherwise we have such a high level, and this is, I don't want to go too far down the social media soapbox, but this is one of the big issues of social media, isn't it? We have this perception of the perfection.
And I'm joking about that in the front. I don't post enough to be perfect at all, anyways.
No, but we do have these sort of comparisons. Social media is one of them. The other one that I found that was a reveal in this, and this was, again, you've inspired me to share this because it is another example of progress, not perfection, is comparing where other people are at in their life. So this one was particularly on a financial level, and it was a friend of mine who was highlighting it, and they were like, well, you know, we're at this point, this is what our dollars are looking like, but these people that I know over here, they seem to always have money, and they've paid off their house, and they can purchase whatever, and it's like, and their kids are like good 15, 20 years older than yours, and they had 2 and you've got 5, and you're still putting 2 through school, and really, we cannot compare this, and
apples and oranges,
and really, what's the progress that these people have made? And we don't know all of the factors that have gone in, and all the different costs, and all the different stories that have been managed along the way. And so, you know, my in-laws, it just happens that 2 of them have purchased Teslas, and another one's just upgraded their car to a newer Mazda, and here we are, Renz and I, sitting with a Mazda that's 11 or 12 years old. Still works perfectly fine because Mazda brand is just lasts forever. And we're kind of considering buying a new car, but we're not quite at that point. And it's like, well, so we don't have the perfect vehicle, but like, just because others have purchased a perfect vehicle or have got the house paid off, or we're still progressing by where we're choosing to put our dollars. And there's, you know, dollars are being chosen to put towards health issues or prevention of health issues, or there's all these different scenarios, and we can take this really quick look at what someone else's life looks like and go, oh, look at that, look how perfect they are, they've got the new car and the house paid off and the this and the that, and really we forget to look at what it is we've achieved, regardless of if we haven't got the house, because we haven't got the house paid off and we don't have the new car. I could go through a whole lot of what we don't have. But what we do have is a house that we're working on to renovate and make it feel fresh and a little bit more fun to live in. And in the process, we get to clean stuff out and make it feel just nicer and less, not that we're hoarding, but like 30 years of collecting of stuff. And that's progress, right?
Yeah.
We're making progress. And then I come back to the renovations, and 6 months after we started this, we still have not completed one room. But we've made progress on the room. And this weekend, I believe, we will finish the room, and I get to go shopping for furniture. Now, does that mean that I will have been moved into the room by this weekend? No. But there will be more progress made, and maybe the following weekend
It's progress, not
It
perfection.
might be in existence. Yeah. So and yeah, so parenting's the same, isn't it? We can look at a situation like you shared and go, well, that wasn't very good then. But it's like, well, how awesome is it that you have such a good foundation relationship with your daughter that you can highlight that to her and her response to you?
I was like,
That's
and
perfection.
I had to sit down with her later that night afterwards, and I'm like, you're a good kid. I I don't want to toot my own horn, but I must be doing an okay job for you to have got to this point where you can take care of me when I screw up.
Totally. And I think that's sometimes our events in our life are not actually about us reaching perfection, but almost when we allow ourselves to do that mistake or the mistake, others get to actually step forward and get a chance to go, well, here you go. I get to, the Mia got to provide something that was more, otherwise she wouldn't have ever got to show you who she was if you didn't take that mistake.
Yeah, it's just another example of seeing their progression.
Yes, exactly. So she then gets an opportunity to show it. And so, you know, we'll get to show our progression on how much improved we can be on our painting this weekend.
I just
And
hope
hopefully
hopefully the
not
ceiling
have
paint
to.
doesn't hit the wall now, and then you got to do the wall again.
Well, if it does, we learn more.
Yeah, that would
Um,
be what would be pounding in my heart. Like, oh no.
Now I have that to fix. But yeah, we do. We kind of yeah, it's this constant. And what if we go back to that definition of perfection being about flexibility and adaptability and being able to go with the flow and move with what's happening? Then I could say that my scheduling on Monday was to perfection because I was able to adapt and be flexible in the moment. And if I apply that to what we can achieve this weekend, it will be perfect because we will adapt and be flexible with what is able to be achieved. And if we have to redo ceiling paint and then we have to redo wall paint because the ceiling paint's now on the wall, so be it.
I really do think it's about changing that definition so that we're not holding ourselves to a standard that's unattainable. Because I think that's what it ultimately ends up becoming, is that unattainable level that we hold ourselves to, and if we don't hit it, then we somehow fail. Um, so
And
I
that
think
fail is a negative. This is the other thing that comes into this, isn't it? Like, fail is seen as such a negative thing, but is it?
I have to say, and I don't use the word fail very often, but when something doesn't go the way I wanted it to, there's always learning in that. And if you apply that learning towards whatever that next thing is, well, then you've won. You've you grow, you expand, you do better, you whatever, because you have that extra learning under your belt. If you don't learn from that, now we got some issue.
Sounds like a whole nother conversation.
It could be.
um, yeah, the learning and so we do get almost. I see that people get scared of failing, but and I don't know if I'm always perfect at that, but I like to feel like I will lean into failing. And that means I have to lean into doing things that I'm not completely
Mhm.
comfortable with or not feeling completely expert at, e.g. painting, and do it anyway and go, I mean, the first failing we had with the painting was that we didn't do the undercoat on the trims. And if anyone's painted trims, they know how much of a nightmare it is. And I had the windowsill trims, the cupboard trims, and the door trims. This is just one room. And I painted it all triple coat, and we had to sand it all the way back.
Oh.
And do it again. Now it looks great. Well, there's some bits that I won't look too closely at because no one else is going to look closely at it.
Exactly.
Oh, but it's certainly now the paint is not peeling off, which was actually the point. But we then learned about, it's going to sound ridiculous, reading instructions.
Oh, those dastardly instructions.
That was the learning. Shall we read what's on the paint tin and follow what they recommend? That would be a good idea. So.
Yeah, one thing I'm pretty I hold pretty hard as far as when my kids, because my kids don't like to fail either. They don't like to do things that they're going to be bad at. And that's why I don't worry too much about grades with them. My whole thing with them is effort. Do the best that you can. I don't care if you get a D. I don't care if you get a C. I don't care if you get an A. I mean, cool, but it doesn't mean anything. It's an arbitrary decision on what your teacher thinks is good or bad. I don't care. But your effort you can control every time. Try. That's all I ask.
Yeah, and that's that leaning in to something that you're not completely comfortable with, that you're not feeling expert at, and just giving it a go. Yeah. Yep. We were always happy with remember Angel, there was one semester in her entire schooling, she's done 18 years of it now, including her 6 years at uni, where she got a B for effort rather than the A for effort. And we were like, what? That became a bit of an arbitrary thing of a teacher as well, because she just didn't like Angel. So that was really interesting. But other than that, we never questioned anything on her report because we were always about doing the effort. The effort was the thing. But even the effort can be seen, well, she showed it well. That teacher showed that apparently the effort wasn't up to scratch. It was ridiculous. And all it was the beginning. I remember this so distinctly. It was the beginning of year 11. So heading into senior year here in Australia, and they treat the kids slightly differently. And Angel just wasn't participating as much as the other kids were. But it wasn't like she wasn't doing her homework or doing all the things, but apparently, yeah, it was simply she didn't put her hand up enough to participate.
You must have a tick box off to the side how many times everyone raises their hands.
Right? Again, does that represent failing? It doesn't.
Not at all.
No. So progress, focus on the progress. And yes, let's adopt the new definition of perfection.
Sounds good to me.
Excellent.
All right.
There you go. Maybe now I can have a few less examples of progress to perfection and just be in the moment.